want to thank you. What's that? That's why you got to come for the live show. I want to thank you guys so much for having me come and share a little bit about my story today. It's so good to be here with you this morning, and I consider it a privilege. Here we are, it's Christmas season, and we're into December already, and I wonder what you're looking for Christmas. What do you want for Christmas? I realize there's maybe one kid here, mostly adults here in this room with us. Maybe you're not thinking as much when you're growing up what you wanted for Christmas, but what are you looking for in life? For me, I spent my whole life wanting more. I wanted to make sense of what was going on. I looked around at society, and I said, there's got to be something more. I look around at where my government was headed. I said, there's got to be something more. I look at my life and my own family, and there's got to be something more. I needed answers. I needed hope. And that's why I brought this light with you. I needed enlightenment. I needed to see beyond this, what I was looking at. I spent so much of my life on a journey for answers, for enlightenment. And maybe you're the same way. Maybe today you're on a journey looking for acceptance, looking for love in life. Maybe for purpose or for meaning. Maybe for something just beyond your normal existence. And I don't know if you've been like me. I've looked everywhere. I have looked into science. I've got books and books about science and trying to find my answers there. I got big into astronomy. I'm looking at the stars. I'm looking at the planets and trying to understand if there's answers there. And my search was unquenchable. It led me to other non-science things, astrology, other religions, things that you guys might even call of the occult. Because I was desperate, just wanting enlightenment from anywhere. And it was this hunger that I couldn't find the answers to. I accumulated so much knowledge, but there was just this mystery I couldn't wrap my brain around. And I think it was then, studying those skies, just looking up, when I saw that star, it was different than anything I saw before. And I'm wondering what that was all about. Because this was definitely very, very different. And so I get together some of my like-minded friends who are into the same stuff that I'm into, and we start pulling out all our books, and we started to get a little bit more of a direction when we open up the Hebrew Scriptures. And I read about the writings of Moses from hundreds of years ago, talking about that there would be a star coming from Jacob. It was a prophecy about this King of Kings for the Jews. And as I'm reading about this, it's hard to describe. It's like there's something happening in my heart that I'm like, I got to find this out. My whole life looking for answers. I need to find out what this is going on with this. And you know what? This was definitely different. The more I studied some of the Old Testament prophets, you call them Old Testament, Micah and Ruth, well, she wasn't a prophet, but hearing about this Davidic king, this king of David, from the Jews, and from his line, there was going to come this King of Kings, this Messiah, this Lord of Lords. And I said, I need to find out more about this, because everything else is not pointing to the answers that I'm looking for. So we get our crew together, and we get ready to travel. We're going to travel to find out who this King of the Jews is. We're going to go to Jerusalem. Now, I'm from the East. It takes a long, long time to get to Jerusalem. So we got to get all our camels, and we got to get all our stuff together. We got to get our attendants. We got to get our guard, because the kind of roads you got to travel to get to Jerusalem, you got to be ready for anything. And we set out hundreds of miles. At 20 miles a day, guys, it took us months to finally get to Jerusalem. So we get to Jerusalem. We're looking for the King of the Jews. Now, you got to understand, this is a weird thing for us, walking into this Jewish capital, because we know the Scriptures enough to know that people like us those who may dabble in the occult or dabble into other religions, there's a lot of contempt for us. And yet, we just need to know. So our guard's up a little bit. There's a big contrast I'm seeing, though, between our hunger for this and the supposed hunger I saw in a lot of these Jewish leaders and scribes, people who are supposed to be studying this their whole life. They just didn't seem to care as much as this unsatiable desire that we had. And here we are representing all different parts of the world, when right here in Jerusalem is where this Messiah is going to be born. Or so we thought. So we did what any wise people would do. We go into Jerusalem and we start asking around, hey, we're here to see the King of the Jews. Can you tell us where the King of the Jews is? And the answer was a little bit weird, because people are like, King of the Jews? I guess you're talking about Herod. We're like, well, no, we know about Herod. We're talking about, like, the King of Kings. You know what I mean? And people are like, not so sure. Like, the star? Have you guys not seen that? I think it's a star. Well, in the meantime, Herod gets word that we're looking around. And things start to get a little bit crazy here. He calls us into his palace. Now, I don't know how much you guys know about Herod. Herod the king, Herod the Great. I mean, Herod the Great, I think he really liked that name. Have you ever met somebody who is really looking for people to see him as significant? Who really wants people's respect? Who really wants people to think much of him or her? Herod the Great was a good name because, man, he had a rule of such great splendor. Some of the buildings this guy put together. I mean, the temple for the Jews that he put together, amazing. Along with the temple for the other gods that he also built. And his palace, when we get up there and we're looking at this beautiful palace up on the hill, and we're looking down, I mean, imagine the ancient Near East in Israel, there's this huge pool where people can go swimming outside. Blew my mind. The stuff that this Herod the Great had put together. I mean, Jerusalem was like this brand new, all the stuff being built, exciting place to be. But I never met somebody so insecure. All the great things that he had done in his search for respect and meaning, man, was he insecure. Yeah. So imagine being called into Herod's office, if you will. You stand before him, and over there's all his scribes and his priests. And he says, why are you here? Awkward. We're here to see the King of the Jews. Which is obviously not him. I mean, he's the King of the Jews, but you know this. He came from the line of Esau, not the line of Jacob. So he was kind of not a pure blood king. The Romans kind of said, here's your king, King of the Jews. And we know Herod was painfully aware of that, don't we? 3 murdered sons later. A murdered mother-in-law later. Murdered family member after murdered family member later. The man had issues. Insecurity issues. He didn't want anybody to take his spot that he was so insecure about, this Herod the Great. And here's us. Man, was I glad that we brought that armored guard. And we said, we're here for the real king. Wow. But he was sly. He just kind of did this smile and he said, I heard about you guys. I've been talking to my chief priests and scribes, and I asked where this King of the Jews was going to be born. And they said, in Bethlehem. They pointed me to this prophecy in Micah from 700 years ago. 700 years ago. Remember what life was like 700 years ago? That's a long time. So he's going to be born in Bethlehem. So he says to us, why don't you go ahead and see if you can find this king and let me know so I too can worship him. And that made me a little uncomfortable because, I don't know, it just kind of creeped me out a little bit about this Herod guy. Maybe it was his background, I don't know. But I got to tell you, those chief priests and scribes, they didn't impress me either. Understand, I have spent my entire life looking through magic, and looking through other religions and looking through the Jewish prophecies, I've traveled thousands of miles to get here. And these scribes who spent their whole life studying this stuff, supposedly looking forward to this Messiah, were 5-6 miles away from Bethlehem. How many of them do you think came with us? Not a single one. Herod says, you guys go and find out, come back and report back to me. And it amazed me how people could be so close to the truth. I mean, even in our society, so many Bibles, so many Bible programs, the internet, all the stuff that people have at their fingerprints that they can find Jesus for, yet their hearts could be so far. I don't know if they were just comfortable where they were. Maybe meeting this Messiah would change things upside down, or I guess they really just had the head knowledge, but not the heart belief. You know what I'm saying? Broke my heart. Brokenhearted, looking at these people who could be so close their whole lives and miss out. And then I look at Herod and kind of had a broken heart for him. Here's this guy who had such potential to do such great things. Imagine, if you will, if Herod would bow his knee to Jesus and say, Jesus is my king, and serve him. Imagine the kind of impact that kind of guy would make if his motivation was now to serve him. If his motivation was to change people's lives for the better, use his resources to do that. But Herod, the scribes, kind of hell-bent on doing it their own way. They did not want their lives interrupted. I don't want to say I'm better than anybody else. I just was hungry, man. I needed something. So, get our stuff together and back out on the road. Another 6 miles south toward Jerusalem. And it could have been disheartening because you're just still traveling. My one guy actually was encouraged. He's like, man, we're getting closer. But as we got outside, it was hard not to be encouraged. Because there was that star thing again. Up in the sky, undeniable. And it's like as we were traveling, the thing was moving. It was like calling us, like some kind of pillar of fire in the sky, directing us to not just Bethlehem, but as we traveled those 5-6 miles into the night, it was probably 5-6 hours into the night, the star just was like resting above this one house. Now, this was no coincidence, I should say. Again, I've studied stars my whole life. Stars don't move. I mean, some people have said, maybe it was a comet. Comets don't move like that. Maybe it was Jupiter and Saturn all kind of lined up. Yeah, but it was moving. Guys, I say star, I'm not even sure it was a star. It might have been some kind of angel. Here's the thing. If God created everything, couldn't he have created this one thing to lead me and my friends to Jesus? Maybe he just made it up for them. The point was, I was now part of his bigger story. I didn't even realize it at the time. You know that I had a part in God's bigger story? Makes me think about you guys. You have a part in God's bigger story. And I started thinking, what if God wants to be found? What if he's pursuing us in ways that speak our language? Like for me, it was the star, man. Like I'm just the star guy. So the star's up, I'm in. I want to know more. But like you heard about Zechariah, the prophet? God spoke to him in the temple. Or you know about the shepherds, they were out at work at night. God spoke to them while they were at work. I wonder, is he trying to speak to you too? In your life? In your own version of the star? Now, don't get me wrong, we need to check it with the scriptures and make sure we're not just imagining things. But what if he's trying to come into your world in a way that you speak, in a way that does line up with scripture? Wow. Then we get there. Man, my whole life searching for answers and for knowledge. And I get to this little house in this little village of Bethlehem. Bethlehem made sense, man. It was where David was from. It was where all those kings of Judah came out of. It was where the star was. But it didn't make any sense at all at the same time. It makes sense for a king of kings to be in this awesome palace in Jerusalem with all this splendor. Well, this Jesus was a totally different kind of splendor than what I was expecting. I was expecting a military hero. I was expecting a political leader that was going to overthrow the government. And that's probably why Herod was afraid. That's probably why everybody else was afraid, because when King Herod's afraid, everybody else is afraid. And, well, you heard about what happened afterwards, right? Those babies. I mean, it must have been about 20 babies that he had killed off. I mean, then we get to the King of the King's house. Knock on the door. And this contractor, Joseph, opens the door. And I meet him. And I meet his wife. Lovely, sweet little lady. And they had every reason to be scared out of their minds. But it's like they had this peace. You ever meet somebody who just has the peace no matter what the situation is, that God's going to take care of it? That was like this young couple. And then I saw him. Jesus. I realized my whole life was pointing me toward this moment. All that hunger, all that searching, all those hours, this mystery of existence, of spirituality, of God, all wrapped up in this little guy. And guys, it's hard to explain, but my heart and my gut, it was just like, this is right. So, guys, get out to the camels. So they go and they get our gifts. What are you going to do? You come to a king's house. You come bringing gifts. We brought 3 different kinds of gifts. I think that's probably why they thought there was 3 of us, because we had these 3 different gifts. I never said 3, did I? 3 gifts. So we brought gold. Gold is fitting for a king. And then we bought this kind of incense. Maybe you've heard it. It's frankincense. It's not like that monster guy. It's a special kind of incense. It's the only kind that you can use on God's altar. I didn't know it. I had no idea. But we were acknowledging this Jesus as king, but also as high priest. You know, the Hebrew scriptures talk about Jesus being this high priest. And here we are bringing him this special incense for a high priest. I just thought we were bringing something nice. And the last one was actually a little bit awkward looking back. Myrrh. You know what myrrh is for? What's that?
For embalming the dead.
Embalming the dead. Hey guys, here's your little baby. Here's for when he gets dead. It's like weird. But at the same time, it's what you do. It was customary. But if this is King of the Kings, the Messiah that everybody's looking forward to, of course he wasn't going to die. And that's the part I think that really got me. I'm going to a seeker, to someone who was found. You know, Jesus did die. Not because of Herod's work or anybody else's from an invading country. It's because he laid down his life for my misdeeds. For all the garbage that I had been through, that I had done to myself, to other people, and for you too. That whoever would put our faith in Jesus would have eternal life. So he died. And he rose again 3 days later. You talk about a king of kings. King over death. King over everything. Wow. So yeah, we gave him the myrrh. And that's when it really hit me. Fully God, fully man, fully priest. I mean, I didn't understand those thoughts fully. But I understood really there was something very different about this Jesus person, and my life would never be different, would never be the same again. So we worshipped. And I appreciate the songs you guys sang earlier. I'm not saying that wasn't worship, but when I'm saying worship is we didn't put our hands in the air and sing songs. We actually got face first into this dirty carpenter's floor and bowed before this King of Kings. What else could you do? My heart was so moved. I needed to worship this King of Kings in the form of this little infant. All those prophecies, I got to be a part of that. You know that there's people prophesying about people like us, that there would be Gentiles from far off nations that would come and bow down before Jesus. And we fulfilled part of that, but I don't think it's even fully fulfilled yet. There's going to come a day when every knee will bow and every tongue will confess that Jesus Christ is Lord. I think, wow, he's awesome. And I get to be a tiny little part of that story. And again, you too can be a part of that story. Man. So we meet Jesus. And then it was time to go. But we did not go back the way we came. What I mean by that, I should explain. We did have a dream, and God spoke to us in this dream and said, don't go back to Herod, which I was okay with. I'm like, yeah, I don't want to go back to that guy anyway. We headed home, but we went back a different way in that we were changed. I was changed. I needed to go back to my family and my home and my people there and tell them that I had finally found what I was looking for all this life. They would pick on me, all the stuff I would look into. And now I finally found in this mystery was a person. And everybody needed to know. I wanted to shout it from the mountains. I want to tell it to the masses. Jesus is Lord. You know, I think wise men are still looking for him. I think wise men find him. I don't know what you're looking for in particular this Christmas or life in general, but I've come to a conclusion. All my learning has come to a simple conclusion. That Jesus fulfills all of our needs. I mean, again, I was looking for enlightenment. But so were the people from 700 years prior in the days of Micah. And even prior to that in the days of Moses. Jesus fulfills the needs of me, but he fulfilled the needs of people of all these different ages who were all looking for the same thing, fulfilled in him. And as you may be looking for love, you may be looking for significance, acceptance. Man, I feel bad for that Herod guy. He never found it. I hope that you will find it in the person of Jesus. Where do you find him? In my travels, I've heard people say, you know, I find God when I'm out in nature. When I feel the breeze on my face. When I see the skies and I see the stars. And I've heard people say, if you want to find God, you find him in the scriptures. You got to study this book. And I've heard people say, if you want to find God, you have to have a personal encounter with Jesus. And you know what I say? D. All the above. That was my experience. I mean, it was this curiosity in nature that there was something bigger than myself that drew me to wanting more. And that's when I started searching the scriptures, and I started searching the scriptures more and more. It drew me to say, there is a personal God. I need to find him. And then when I did meet him, and I met him, that's when I really saw God through a personal relationship with Jesus. When you find Jesus, my friends, you find joy. Yes, there's suffering in this world. But you find this joy that's inexplainable. It goes down to your gut, where you feel like, wow, I really am loved. There really is purpose to me being here. There really is a God who's way bigger than all of this, and he is good. Your search for love, for satisfaction, for acceptance, it can be found in him. And one last thing as I finish my story here. I just want to communicate one last thing, and that is, I wanted to add Jesus onto my shelf of all the other things I've accumulated along the way. And one could call that life enhancement. My life is better, so let me get this thing for me. But I found it wasn't about life enhancement as much as it was life emptying. It was when I bowed my knee and worshiped Jesus that I realized, wow, I need to lay down my life for him. And as I lay down my life for him, I find my life. Whoever loses their life for Christ will find it. Will find it for real in him. So I hope that, like me, you too can bow your knee to find Jesus. And when you find Jesus, worship him. And by worshiping him, find that all those things that you felt you really needed are met in a person, this mysterious God. Anything holding you back? Don't let anything hold you back. Thanks for letting me share my story. Have a good day.